Hello friends, myself Shriram Korde. Now we have reached a stage as part of C hands-on video series where we need to understand structures. Up to now we have seen variables, we have seen arrays, then we have seen 2D arrays, then we basically used all these things in the form of writing a conditional program. Then we also made use of loops, that means while loop, for loop, do while loop. Then we also studied strings. Now comes a time where we need to put all these things in practice. Now why do I say that? Because some of you may think, now we have written programs. So what is that basically now you are trying to tell us? And that's where comes the structures. If you look at the real examples, suppose if I consider a student information, then student will have its roll number, then his name, then his address, then it could be his contact number like mobile number and things like that. So that's the first example. Another example can be bank account, where you have a bank account number, then you have the name on which that bank account is, then the amount of money, that means the balance, then some other details like if there is any fixed deposit, then if there is any loan and things like that. Another example can be say an automobile. Now automobile, in that probably I can think of say car. Then in that the first question could be like which brand, then how much is the cc, like whether it is a 2000 cc or still powerful car and things like that. Then there are several such examples which we see in our day-to-day life. That means we don't deal with things when it comes to actual application in individuality, but we essentially deal it in unit. And that particular thing, when I say that we deal it together or as a unit, essentially that's where the structure fits into it. I will not go too much far beyond it, but even the way in which you typically will have object oriented programming and the thoughts behind it basically comes from structure. Why? Because when you have a class and when you have a structure, then more or less there are similar things that one does. Obviously there are object oriented other paradigms which play a role, but the point I'm just trying to make it is you essentially are going to deal as an entity together. You are not going to deal it separately. That means, to put it in still simple words, if I just have an array of say amount of money, or if I just have an array of marks, then it doesn't make any sense to me unless that marks basically is part of some group of students. That means for a particular student you will have his roll number, his name, then his section, then which year or which whatever the grade he is studying, and then obviously the marks and things like that. So point is that we basically have to deal as an entity, and that's where now we are going to study structures. So let me just take you to structures and we will try to understand how do we first of all declare a structure and then how do we use it. Probably that we will study in the further videos, but at least we need to see how do you declare a structure. So if I just take you to code here, Visual Studio Code, then the way in which I can declare a structure is you have this keyword struct and then I can give the struct and then I can give the name of the struct as struct student. Okay, and you can see it helps us to create data in between. Okay, now typically you will have multiple things or multiple parameters or multiple fields, and which when I say parameters it's not the right word probably, but I can think of it as a properties. Okay, so that properties are essentially part of this structure. So here I will say struct student, and then I can basically have say his integer roll number. Then I can basically have his say grade. Okay, so I can simply put it grade. Okay, then I can have say float and then percentage PER. How much percentage of marks, that means CGPA or GPA basically he is getting. So let me just put it here as GPA. You can call it as percentage. Okay, so something like this I can do. Then obviously I will have the person's, that means student's name. Okay, so here I can have say character, and then for name probably I will give say 20, and then I can have the name. That means what I am doing basically is a entity, and student is an entity. So essentially what I have done is I have done something which is called as user defined data type. User defined data type, that is what we are doing, user defined data type. And that's why, because now struct student, that means now up to now we used to do int roll number, that means roll number is a variable name and it's of the data type integer. If the grade, then grade is a name of the variable and its data type is character. Similarly for name, which is essentially a character array, and we obviously are going to use it as a string, and then GPA or percentage of marks, essentially whose data type is float. Now we are considering the student as a complete entity, and then we need to obviously have its variable. If I can have student, then probably I can have also something like say struct, and then I can have say something like some struct book. Then I can have the name of the book. So I can say name of the book. I can give say 20 again. Then I can give float price of the book. I can give say its integer, say ISBN code. There is some code, unique code typically which book will have. And probably we will have say character author. Okay, and then we can keep it here say 30, something like this. So that means this is another example. Why? Because if I say just book, then the other question typically will come is who is the author. If I just tell the author, then somebody who is interested probably in that book, then name. So name can be say title. I will put it here instead of name. I can have a better word than title. So if I just tell the title to somebody and I recommend book for reading, then somebody will ask, okay, how can I buy it? What can be the cost? So that means you need that. And if it is not easily available, probably he or she may require some ISBN number and unique number and things like that, like publisher unique number and things like that. And then obviously you need to know the author. So the way in which I am just putting it to you, essentially when we talk about book, it's not something which is just title of the book, but there are other things which get associated with it. Another example can be, I can have say struct say car, and then when I say struct car, then obviously I will have say character, and then I will say make. So make, for that I will probably keep say 30. Then I will say basically the int cc or cubic capacity. Then I will say whether it is a sports car or not. That means I can keep on having so many things. Then float, I can have say cost. Then is there anything discount and all that. So a lot of things basically I can keep on doing like this. So point I'm just trying to make it is, here you are now going to deal with an entity and not the way in which up to now we have learned, like integer, you can have an integer marks or just an array of marks, or probably you can have say just names or say price array and things like that. No. So you basically are going to have an entity. Now when you are going to have such an entity, then obviously you need to know how do I initialize it. So suppose if it is a book, then I can initialize it in something the way in which we typically do a variable. So I can just do here, say for book, or probably for an student and book, we will just try to do that. So let me just remove this now, and we will consider these two examples. So let's say now book. So we have this struct book. So we have to give this struct book, and now I will define a variable. So probably I will say variable is say b1, or I can just say ABC. It doesn't matter to me. Okay. However, it makes sense for me that I create something like B1, B2, B3, and say B4, four books. So what exactly I am doing? So B1 is a variable of type struct book. This is very important. The way in which we used to say price is a variable of type float. Suppose if I would have had here int I, then what we say is I is a variable of type integer. On the similar lines here, what we are doing is book b1 is a variable of type struct book. B2 is again a variable of type struct book. Similarly b3, similarly b4. Now obviously we can take input from user, but suppose if I just use only one variable, then I can initialize the structure then and there itself, and the way in which I can initialize the structure is something like this. So I can have the title of the book, say suppose if it is say maths book, okay, so probably we can say discrete mathematics. Discrete math, let me just put it in short. Okay, so this is the title. Then probably I can give some price as let's say 500 rupees, Indian rupees. Okay, and then I can say some author, Indian author. Okay, so I can always give some name of the Indian author, and I can give it here, say Raju, Raju R, something like this. Okay, so what now I am doing is basically is this title essentially is discrete maths, then the price is 500 and Raju R. Suppose if I had B2, B1, B2, B3, then I could initialize it like this, and the way in which then we basically use it is through B. So that is what we need to learn as we proceed forward. Similarly, if it is struct student, then I can always do it here, struct student, and then I can have a variable getting created as S, and then probably right now I want to initialize it. So let's say the roll number of the student is let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then grade is let's say he is in grade A. Okay, and then name, so name probably I will give say John, and then John D'Souza, and then let's say his GPA is let's say out of 10. Suppose if the GPA is out of 10, then probably I will say 9.1, something like this. So that means now what I have done is basically I have created a variable and then I also have initialized it. I could simply create another variable say for student and I need not initialize it. Okay, so I can have say student and another student is there, let's say 2, 3 like that. So, and later I want to give the values, obviously I can give the values, and we will study now as we proceed in this video series with respect to structures. We will study how we basically can work with structures, and we will also write some programs. I hope you got introductory information about structures and you will find it interesting. Why? Because that's where you actually start applying the knowledge that you have up to now got. Thank you.